As much fun as all these late game heroics are, and they are fun, if you're gonna lose anyway, at this point, just lose in regulation. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken do fall in overtime 4-3 to the Calgary Flames in Calgary, the last meeting between the two teams on the season. For the Flames, two very important points in the standings as they are still on the outside looking in, but in the playoff race here late down the stretch. Meanwhile, for the Kraken, they end up picking up a loser point, which certainly does not help where they're at in the standings. Yeah, it's technically better than 2 points, but at least with 2 points you get a win. At least the good news for the Kraken in that whole race to the bottom, or race for the best possible odds in the draft lottery, trying to get especially one of those top 4 spots where the best group of prospects are going to be in the draft, is that 2 of the 3 teams that they're chasing to try to get higher up in that order did them a favor by getting wins in games that you certainly wouldn't have expected them to get wins in, with the Sabres managing to win. I guess it doesn't matter whether it's regulation or not, but they do win in regulation against the Senators, and then the Predators managed to beat the Hurricanes. Now, yeah, the other team in the Flyers did get absolutely murdered by the Leafs, so in the end the Kraken still, for now anyway, stay in that same 6th spot that they came into the day in, but they do make up the 1 point on 2 of the teams while jumping a point on the 3rd. But anyway, with all that being said, for now we'll move on to the game itself. That whole draft situation is something we'll continue to keep an eye on here over the last 10 games of the season. Now just 10 games left after this game against the Flames. We'll see how things shake out there. The Kraken still within 4 points of that 3rd spot in the draft lottery order, and also 4 points the other way of dropping back to the 9th spot. There's not really much more wiggle room past that. They'll be somewhere between 9 and 3rd, but especially in this draft, that could make a pretty big difference. But again, as far as the game is concerned, the Kraken were very close, just a handful of seconds, or a few handfuls of seconds, but not very long away from doing exactly what they did just a few days ago in Edmonton, in losing fun. Getting no points in the standings, but still playing a very solid, respectable game, and in this case, against a team that actually had all of their good players. Those players aren't as good as the 2 previous teams that they played, but still a team that wasn't nearly as injured as the last 2 teams the Kraken played. And I would even say that the Kraken were the better team for the majority of this game. Certainly, I think you can make that argument for the 2nd and 3rd periods. Yeah, the Flames do outscore the Kraken, weirdly enough, in the 3rd, which is not something we've seen a ton this season. But the Kraken were, overall, I would say, still the better team, and still found a way, with good goaltending performances at either end of the ice, to be down a goal with just the last few seconds left and Decord pulled from the net. Though I suppose before we go any farther, we should probably stop and go back to the beginning to see how we get to that point to where the Kraken are fighting with the empty net in the last few seconds of the game to try to tie things up and get it to overtime. Because yes, while there is a good chunk of the fan base that would like the Kraken to just roll over and lose in regulation, I mean, we know none of the players are going to do that. They're far too competitive, and even outside of that, you wouldn't want players that are actively trying to play into the tank. You want guys that are out there competing every minute of every game to try to win every game. You don't want ever to have that mentality of trying to lose, even if it is what's best for the organization long term. Even outside of the fact that individually the players are still playing for jobs and contracts, and well, for the coaching staff to have faith in putting them into the lineup and giving them minutes every night. Now, with that being said, as we get into the game, with, I think, pretty much the exact same lineup as the previous one in Edmonton. 2 days rest, so not really any huge reason to start Grubauer instead of Decord, other than Decord continues to seem a little bit tired here towards the end of the season with the number of games that he has played, but at least there's 2 days rest between and not a ton of travel between Edmonton and Calgary. Either way, same lineup, and even with the 2 days rest, or maybe it was because there was a 2 days rest, the Kraken come out looking pretty sluggish. It takes them a while to warm up into the game. They really aren't getting anything going offensively. At the very least, Calgary isn't getting a ton of at least dangerous looks. They are getting the majority of the chances, and certainly the majority of the time with the puck, but nothing that really has to make Decord work all that hard until we get to the halfway point of the period, at which point the Kraken do get their best chance of maybe the entire first period right about the halfway point of it. That is saved by Wolf, and then back the other way, Calgary gets the puck to the net, and it's just hack and whack time in front of the crease. The Kraken can't get to the puck at all, whether that's Decord trying to reach out to scoop the puck towards him to get a glove on it, or especially Alexiak, who kind of just has the puck in his feet, but any number of Kraken players that were around the net just can't seem to find the puck, so the Flames get 2, 3 whacks at it, and eventually the third one does go over the pad of Decord and into the net to give the Flames the 1-0 lead halfway through the first. And that would pretty much sum up all the, at least meaningful action of the first period. Again, not a terribly interesting first 8-9 minutes of it, then a quick minute or two that was pretty fun, and then back to not much of anything happening for the rest of it, including a Kraken power play that was honestly awful. The Kraken were lucky that there weren't any shorthanded attempts. They really gave the Flames a couple good opportunities to try to get some. I think they did actually get one to the net, but I'm not even sure if it resulted on a shot on goal. Either way, the Kraken dodge a couple of bullets with the Flames just not able to jump on some opportunities handed to them and make absolutely nothing happen towards the Calgary net. We get to the first intermission then with the Kraken down 1-0, and aside from one decent chance from, I'm pretty sure it was Asiamont, really not a ton of fight the other way. And at least early in the second period, things would not get a whole lot better for the Kraken. If anything, they would get worse as the Flames get some early momentum, which leads to an early power play and a few pretty good chances. They have the puck in the Kraken end for the majority of the power play. The Kraken eventually start to buckle down a bit in the final 30 or so seconds of it, but it's a lot of good play from Joey Decord and a couple timely shot blocks that keep the puck out of the net, at which point the Kraken get things turned around and do so almost immediately. Right as the power play comes to an end, Montour out of the box, in stride, picks up the puck in on a breakaway. The save made by Wolf, but the Kraken keep the momentum starting to go in their direction. It's not all Kraken immediately right away, but things start to tilt towards Calgary's end of the ice, and it does help that the Kraken then end up on a power play of their own. And while this one gets off to a pretty similar start to how the one at the end of the first period went, which is to say absolutely nothing happening for the Kraken in the offensive end and tempting fate back the other way, as we get into the back half of the power play, the Kraken figure out how to flip that switch again and make it happen. And they make it happen too in a way that we've been kind of hoping that they could do more consistently for pretty much their entire existence. It's not just a rush chance that they get down towards the net that you could even see happening at 5-on-5. They get into the offensive zone, set up pretty quickly, and then it's just a nice, quick tic-tac-toe passing play back and forth across the slot that gets Wolf moving from one side of the net to the other, and by the time it gets to Schwartz right next to the net, because they also not even just work it back and forth across, but also back and forth across and down towards the net where Schwartz is waiting on the other side. Wolf has done a pretty good job of reading all of that and makes it so that Schwartz doesn't just have a tap in on the back door, but Schwartz is still able to move it to the front of the net and put it right through Wolf's 5-hole as he stretches out to that side to try to make the backdoor save. The Kraken with the power play goal tie things up here, still early-ish in the second period. And then after a little bit of a pushback from the Flames over the next minute or two, the Kraken take back over for the rest of the second period, pressing to try to take the lead through another power play that honestly looked the best of any of the three power plays, but this time doesn't end up scoring. But nonetheless, the Kraken maintain momentum through that power play and keep it going as it gets back to 5-on-5. And uncharacteristically for this team in a second period this season, they just would not be denied. Eventually, with a minute and a half left in the period, they do find the net for a second time. This time it comes off a turnover in the neutral zone as the Flames just throw the puck down the ice. And it probably would have ended up just being an icing and going back the other way if it wasn't intercepted by Vince Dunn at the Kraken blue line. And he just throws it right back through the neutral zone onto the tape of Ty Cartier, who whips around quickly, beats two defensemen down the ice for the partial breakaway shot. But it's a perfect shot into the far side top corner, an absolute snipe to give Cartier his 5th of the season, and the Kraken the 2-1 lead going into the third. A third period where, once again, as we well know at this point in the season, the Kraken have all season long been one of the absolute best teams in the NHL in those final 20 minutes. And on the rare occasion where they do go into the final 20 with a lead, they have been almost unbeatable. And when they are beatable, it usually does happen in extra time. Again, though, uncharacteristically for this team, like the good second period, on the scoreboard, this third period does not go well for them. By which I mean it's uncharacteristic that the Kraken not only had success in the second period, but also things, at least on the scoreboard, did not go well for them in the third. Probably could have worded that better, but you get my point. The consistency between the two periods is that they don't really line up with how things have gone for the Kraken this season. Anyway, early in the period, and I mean pretty much right away to start out the period, the Flames get a couple of very good chances on Decord, which he's able to respond to keep the Kraken in the lead. And although the Flames keep the momentum for the first couple of minutes, it's quickly snuffed out by a Kraken power play that doesn't really go much of anywhere. Again, the Kraken not able to make anything happen on this power play like on the first one that ended the first period, but it does serve to flip the momentum in the game. The Kraken, through the middle part of the period, or at least up to the middle part of the period, really seem to have control, and unless something drastic happens, this looks like one that the Kraken are just going to come away with, turtle up by the end of it, maybe get a mid-period goal and some rush chance or something like that, or an empty netter, who knows. And we'll never find out because something, at least semi-drastic anyway, does happen as Montour heads to the box again, but this time for 4 minutes on a double minor for a high stick. And although the Kraken do actually a really good job of killing off the double minor, they nearly get the entire 4 minutes killed off with really only one good chance for the Flames that came in the first 2 minutes. Decord was able to respond to that one with a good save. But eventually, what really is just the second opportunity in the whole 4 minutes that the Flames get comes in the final few seconds, and it comes off the stick of Nazem Kadri, who's just given way too much time and space to pick his spot and take his shot. And I understand it's still a power play. They still have the extra skater, so someone is going to be open. But you can't give, especially that guy, that much time to pick a shot. And he shows why as he beats Decord. I think it was over the glove hand, but it's just a perfectly placed shot into a top corner of the net to tie the game for the Flames. Now, yes, it could have also helped that, for one, it would have been best if someone had just gone out to challenge Kadri with the puck at some point while he was winding up this shot. But it also would have been nice if Riker Evans, who tries to go for the block on the shot, was at least in the shooting lane, but he's just a little bit too far outside of it when he puts a knee to the ice to try to get a block. It just goes well past him and over to Cord. And then with the power play goal, the Flames are also able to really seize the momentum in the game at that point as we get into the back half of the third, and it doesn't take them long to take the lead with that momentum. Into the offensive end, the next goal is a shot through what is just a screen of Kraken players. I can't remember exactly which two Kraken players, but it's a two-man screen and a shot from Rasmus Andersson that Decord just never sees coming until it's into the far side of the net past him, at which point it's, obviously already too late, and Andersson is already taunting a Kraken fan on the other side of the glass from where he took that shot. Which, as far as that's concerned, yeah, we're all in solidarity with that Kraken fan and feeling disappointed in the moment that the Kraken just, gave up the lead to the Flames, but I gotta admit, it's kind of funny, and it's something that Andersson has been doing all season long to away fans, whether it's on the road or especially when it's in Calgary. It's kind of one of those things that I just wish was a little bit more in hockey. It adds a little bit of personality to the game, which we don't always get to see. And importantly is also adding that personality into the game in a way that is, fun. And if not necessarily strictly good-natured, at least has a sense of humor. Unlike some of the other ways we see it added in by like a Tom Wilson, for example, or more specifically in this game, whatever his first name is, Popasil or Poopsil, I'm never going to bother to get his name right. He's still a sorry excuse for an NHL player and continues to do dumb, dirty things to the Kraken. At least in this particular game, those dumb, dirty things were just that. They were dumb and a little bit dirty, not downright dangerous like we have seen in the past. It's the same guy that injured Vince Dunn at the end of last season and nearly injured, if he was not a giant of human, Adam Larson. In this particular game, it's just kind of late hits, a couple of cheap shots, and then spraying snow in the face of Joey Decord when he absolutely has no reason to do so. At the very least, it was nice to see that the Kraken were not shy about giving it right back to him, throwing a couple of punches. Vince Dunn gives him a sucker punch and sends him to the ice. Well, sucker punches, maybe putting it a little bit dramatically. He was definitely asking for it, but Dunn gets him with a good one. He falls to the ice on that occasion and then still comes back and throws snow in Decord's face and gets a face full of ACM on for that. So yeah, the Kraken at least having enough of him and letting him know it. Honestly, at this point, I understand that Tyler Myers is still probably public enemy number one, and what he did to Matty Beniers is still the worst thing that any opposing player has done to a Kraken player, with the close number two being Makar in the playoff game on McCann. Still that open ice with his back turned and all that, the Tyler Myers' hit on Beniers is easily the worst, especially with it being his rookie season, and it kept him out of that playoff appearance. Still, it was kind of just the one moment, and boy, it seems like every time the Kraken play the Flames, there's Poopsill doing something poopy, just being a general turd, and he also doesn't offer anything really of value, like Myers at least does get a goal every now and then. But anyway, getting back into the game itself, at this point, the Kraken are late in the third, down 3-2. Still, you kind of feel like they've been the better team for the majority of the game and just let it slip away with that double minor. And then the Flames, desperate as they are to get points in the standings, were just able to seize that momentum and make it happen to take that lead and eventually win the game. For the Kraken, especially with both the Sabres and Predators having already won, I mean, you can feel good about how you played in this game, and you still don't pick up any points in the standings, so you can get closer to that better draft spot. But ever the third period dominant team that the Kraken are, they just will not go away. A couple minutes later, with less than 2 minutes left in the game, in the third period, down 1, they get Decord pulled, and the puck never gets anywhere near the empty net, and pretty quickly back at the other end, the Kraken get it up to the net for some hack and whack time. Beniers with a chance, that saved it, bounces out to the other side, where Jordan Eberle is able to sneakily just poke his stick in there, and with the end of the blade of his stick, taps it through the 5-hole and into the back of the net, past Wolf, to give the Kraken their third goal and tie things very late in the third, inevitably then sending this game to overtime. An overtime that was fairly even, back and forth. Both teams had their chances. Nothing particularly dangerous right up until it's Nazem Kadri with a breakaway, and again, a pretty dangerous offensive player when you give him all the time and space that he needs. He demonstrates why for a second time, in a different way, with just a bunch of fancy handwork as he gets up towards the net, and then a quick move around Decord as he gets Decord to go to one side, puts it around the other to end it in overtime, giving the Flames that 4-3 victory. So one more time then, at the very least with this game, for those that are cheering for the tank, for the Kraken to pick up as few points as possible the rest of the way, they do only get the 1 point out of this game, but they do also get the 1 point out of the game. Still, it's a respectably played game. The Kraken hung in it all the way, and again, I would say we're the better team for the majority of the last 40 minutes of the game. The first period was... the Kraken didn't play well, but the Flames weren't really playing well either. So even though the Kraken came out of it down just 1-0, I don't know that you can really take anything that positive out of the first, especially when it gets ended with that terrible power play that I still kind of feel like they deserve to be scored on shorthanded during, at least the way that they played on the power play anyway. But they do play a very good second period and a pretty good third period right up until that double minor that even through most of the double minor they played very well, just ends up with the one mistake at the end, giving Kadri all that time and then not taking away the shooting lane so he can tie the game, at which point you got to give credit to the Flames. They are desperate for the points, and they found a way to get them in this one. A couple positives that you can take out of this game from a Kraken perspective, though, are that, well, one, and this is probably the biggest one to me anyway, you saw, again, a glimpse of what the future of this team looks like, with the top two centers of Beniers and Wright, who combined for almost 41 minutes of ice time in this game. Beniers over 22 minutes and Wright over 18. You also got to see quite a bit more, over 14, actually I think even closer to 15 minutes of Yanni Newman, who looked fantastic on the power play. He gets nearly 4 minutes of power play time and a couple absolute bombs of slap shots that he put at least one off the post, maybe even a second one off the post. And one of them in particular made a very loud sound just an inch away from putting a hole in the back of the net. So that's, I mean, another good sign, another weapon on the power play that the Kraken will be able to use. And with the way that Wright was playing and seeing the ice, moving the puck well, he had a couple of opportunities that he set up for other Kraken players that could have easily ended up in the back of the net. One in particular in the third that would have given the Kraken at that point, I want to say, a 2-goal lead. He made a very nice pass to Cale Fleury, jumping down into the play, coming down the other side of the slot, and just another very nice save made by Wolf, who, as far as Wolf is concerned, both goaltenders great in this game. Wolf is in kind of a three-way race for the Calder. In my eyes, though, this is a Calder that's going to turn out somewhat similar to the one that Beniers won, in that there's a goaltender from Alberta that will probably end up third, and then you'll have a player in his division at center on the other side of the border that's going to end up winning it in Macklin Celebrini. Lane Hudson for the Habs has a pretty good chance as well. Either way, two very good goaltending performances, and unfortunately, because he's in our division, Wolf looks like the real deal. He could be really good for quite some time in Calgary. I mean, hasn't necessarily gone as smoothly in following seasons for Skinner in Edmonton, but that's a little bit more Edmonton, I think. I don't know. I like the way that Wolf plays, and that could be a thorn in the Kraken's side going into the future, although at least now we have Decord to answer that at the other end of the ice. With that, though, let's finish things out here with the Kraken 3 stars. As always, brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you do want to help decide 3 stars after Kraken games, or help decide team awards for the channel at the end of the season, you can help support a little bit more than you already are, which I really appreciate by watching to this point, by going to the link down below and supporting on Patreon as well. With the first star in this game, Patreon has spoken, and it has to be Jordan Eberle. He has the game-tying goal at the end, and just in general, Eberle has been fantastic since his return. 2, 3, maybe 4 games of warming into it there, knocking the rust off after a couple of months of not playing NHL hockey, but he has been fantastic. Certainly one of the top 3 forwards for the Kraken since his return. Second star, gonna go with Yanni Newman. Again, another very good game, almost 15 minutes of ice time, looked very dangerous on the power play, had a couple of moments at 5-on-5 too, where just all of a sudden he has the puck going the other way, gets a good shot off, or almost gets a good shot off. One particular occasion, he had what looked like a breakaway, but at the last second, a Flame player was able to catch up to him and lift his stick just enough that he kind of just pushes the shot away from the net out to the side. It doesn't end up on it. Still doing a lot of things at a much higher level than you would expect for a guy who's not even played 10 games in the NHL, and also is pretty young. And then the third star is kind of a take your pick of a few different players. A couple of guys that are also named over on Patreon are Shane Wright, Ty Cartier, and John Hayden, especially that fourth line having another fantastic game. Or in the first period, the fourth line was really the only one that played respectably for the Kraken, I would say. The other lines kind of took a while to get into this game, but that fourth line from puck drop to the end of overtime, or the end of regulation, none of them played in overtime, but you know what I mean. The entire 60 minutes, they were playing very well, especially within their role. And in that way, I'm going to go off the board with my third star and go with Mikey Asiamont for having a number of good offensive opportunities. He had the best chance for the Kraken in the first, a couple of good chances where he gets denied in the second, and also, and this is maybe one of the bigger parts of it, was one of the guys that got very much in the face of Papusil, or whatever his name is there in the third, when he sprayed snow onto Cord. He was right there to defend him, and that's something that, especially since it's been a frustration for us as Kraken fans over the history of this team, that they're not always the fastest to go to the defense of teammates when something less than ideal happens to a teammate. When you have a guy, especially a newer player to the team in Asiamont, even if he's not going to be around for a while, not wasting a second in going to the defense of his goaltender, especially when it's against one of our least favorite players for an opposing team, yeah, that's going to win some points for sure. So for that reason, and also just having a good game generally, I'll go with Asiamont for the third. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below about this game, who your 3 stars would be, and where you're at this point in the season. Whether you're starting to get more on board with just kind of hoping the Kraken don't pick up points, or if you still want them to win every game, because let's face it, it's still just more fun to watch your team win. With that, though, until next time, which will be again against the Oilers, though this time at home, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.